I get it. The prophets are really, really boring. In fact, most of the time, it's like 20 chapters, for example. I just recently read this. Ezekiel chapters 4 through 24 are all prophecy of condemnation on God's people. 20 chapters of prophecy of this is gonna happen because you disobeyed me. And that's just 20 chapters in Ezekiel. There's like another 30 of like what's gonna happen to Gentile nations. I get it, they're boring. So how are we supposed to study them? Like, especially when we're reading through the Bible, what are we supposed to get from the prophets? How are we supposed to study them? Let's begin. This past weekend, I went to a baby shower. I promise this story has a point. At that baby shower, I got to see my best friend from college. She and I are like sisters. In fact, we might be just as closer than my real life sisters. Every single time I see her, I always get flashbacks to how we first became best friends. We first became best friends because we both found ourselves like freshman year in one of those classes that you have to take just to fulfill the requirement for your degree. You're not actually interested in the class, you just have to take a music class, so you take a music class. Yeah. And I was like, I'm musical, I'll be fine. So we both take this class and we show up the first day and it is really hard. He plays a single classical song without telling us who wrote it, what year it was, anything about it, and asks us to tell him who the author is, what year was it written, what kind of style is it, like all of this crazy information that there was like no way I was gonna know. And he expected us to know that much stuff like coming into the class. Then, I don't know, every like 2 weeks, we'd get these horrible big tests. It makes my heart rate rise just remembering how horrible it was. And you know what? We bonded over that class because we were both equally just as lost when it came to that class. I'm telling you, we were so lost in that class. And all we wanted was for someone to just give us the clues, give us the answers or the roadmap through that class because it seemed nearly impossible. And maybe you feel that way with the prophets. Maybe you feel like Jeremiah or Ezekiel or whatever book you're reading right now will never end and it's a lot of pages of gibberish. And I'm gonna be honest with you, to a degree, it kind of is sometimes. And that's okay. It is included in God's word for a reason. There's always some kind of gold there. So I'm gonna give you a few basic pointers on where to go, where to dig so that you can get some meat from the passage. And so it's not just like, yeah, I'm reading through Jeremiah because I have to and I don't really know what's going on, but like so you can get stuff from it. Now, first of all, you know that I'm going to tell you to grab a commentary. Everybody always asks me, so let me just tell you, if you do not have any commentary and you need a beginner commentary, right there, the Bible Knowledge Commentary. This is a good beginner commentary because it's just 2 volumes. So there's an Old Testament and a New Testament, and it's got a lot of meat for what's in it. It's got a lot of random important things about like theme, good outlines, stuff like that, that not all short commentaries have. And I mentioned outline there for a reason. So let me grab a commentary. Over here, these red and blue ones, this is all like one big commentary volume set. There's like 48 in this set, and obviously I don't have all 48 with me, so I'm just gonna grab a random one. So this is the one on Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, and Zephaniah. And in a lot of these commentaries, especially when they're like volume sets, or the Bible Knowledge Commentary has this too, they will outline the book for you. I don't think all commentaries do great outlines or thorough outlines. So you definitely want to find yourself a commentary with a thorough outline. Like for example, I just flipped to a random page. This is, okay, in the middle of Micah, the section of chapters 3 through 5 in Micah. This is the outline that they provide for just those 2 chapters. Just 2 chapters here, and it's outlined for you. Now, not only is this like the study guide to reading through whatever prophet you're in, but what you can do, come here. So what you can do is go through the outline, and everywhere where it gives you a section, like one of my commentaries told me chapter 1 verses 1 through 11 is all a section or a description of the city's destruction. So I marked that. I highlighted the verses 1 through 11 and I marked. These are all verses that are a description of the city's destruction. These verses are a plea for compassion. Oh look, I even gave the structure of the book here. And this isn't even all the information they gave me. I remember I had to like kind of summarize the big portions of it. So then when I'm reading through my Bible, I can just see at a glance, oh, okay, this whole section in green highlighter is God's wrath imposed on Jerusalem's destruction, or this is an appeal for punishment of the enemies. And not only would this give you just like a crash course of the book, a crash course of what's going to happen in the book before you start reading it, but also that is forever marked in my Bible, Lamentations. So I will never flip through the book of Lamentations in my Bible and not know a really good idea of what's going on. In fact, I remember when I was outlining the book of Lamentations, I was able to see, oh, each chapter is a different lament. Oh, and each lament is crying out or lamenting something specific in a different angle. So maybe it's lamenting the leaders, maybe it's lamenting what the Gentile nations will do, whatever it is, each chapter is actually part of the structure too. It helped me to see, oh, wow, and a lot of the chapters have just 22 verses. And then as I read in the commentary, oh, wow, specific chapters work through the Hebrew alphabet, and that's why there's 22 verses. You get the idea? Once you start to get the structure, that's like the beginning of being able to go deeper. Another thing I want you to do is every single time there's a fulfillment in the prophets, if there is something in a prophet that is fulfilled in the New Testament, that is super important. Oftentimes the prophets will prophesy something that is fulfilled later in the Old Testament, like, for example, the exile. That is very important. You want to mark that down. But even more so, mark down the prophecies of Jesus, the prophecies of the church, the prophecies of God's people, like post Jesus, post the cross, and especially prophecies of redemption. Because I'm just going to give you the heads up, books of prophecy, minor prophets, major prophets, they will oftentimes have the major theme of obeying God and obeying God's word. And if they don't obey God's word, they will face destruction, they will face calamity, they'll face some kind of punishment of sorts, which is a natural outworking of their disobedience. And that is a picture of us without Jesus. So if this is the Old Testament here, and this is the New Testament, right here is the birth of Jesus. It's Matthew starting out with the narrative of Jesus being a prophesied Messiah, right? And then you've got Revelation at the end here, in the very end of the story, right? But the majority of the Old Testament, or a big chunk of it, is prophecies about the ending of the story. So the majority of what you'll be reading in the prophets in the Old Testament are prophesying about Jesus, prophesying about obedience, prophesying about God's people facing destruction or God's people facing turmoil because of their disobedience or because of their disobedient kings and leaders. It's really, really important to differentiate between the prophecies that apply to God's people then and the prophecies that will apply to you and me, like Revelation, like prophecies about the God's people of the church, and the overall message that is, we are called to obey God's word. We are called to obey God out of love, and that there are natural consequences if we don't do that. And he has sent Jesus as a promise. And that promise and that fulfillment has already happened. If you're studying the prophets, you want to make sure that you're faithful to the original audience and the original author's intent, like what the original author was meaning to say. So like if I was just to flip to a random page in the prophets, Jeremiah is a book that's a combination or compilation of a bunch of messages that he gave. And I wrote, Jeremiah ends first message with a metaphor of spiritual harlotry. So Jeremiah, a real man, was preaching or prophesying to God's people, hey, you've been unfaithful to God spiritually, just like an unfaithful wife to her husband. We have been unfaithful to God. We have worshiped false gods. Now, he is not saying that to you and me here in 2021, but it is important to understand that that could be true of our nation. That could be true of our lives. That could be true of anybody, anywhere. And what we don't want to lose sight of is this is before the cross. Jeremiah said this to God's people. God's people were being disobedient. They then suffered the consequences. They went through the exile, they went through Babylonia. And then now today, us post the cross, we're called to respond to the love and the mercy of Jesus on the cross. We're called to respond to the examples of our forefathers. So it's almost like I'm asking you to study the context, because like I could easily say, well, America is a spiritual harlot. And that might be true, but that is not what Jeremiah was writing to. And if we read it that way, we will not be taking into consideration separation, the cross. And that makes everything so much more weighty. It makes it so much more important that we obey God, because not only were they called to obey God before the cross, but now even more so, God has given a piece of himself. He's given Jesus to die on the cross for us. I know that's probably not like the perfect Trinitarian language to use, that like Jesus is a part of himself, but I don't know how else to explain it and put emphasis on it. Now post the cross, even more so, we are called not to be spiritual harlots. When you're studying the prophets, you really want to pay attention to the context. And one of the best ways to do that is just to have a general idea of who wrote it, who they're writing to, like what's the date, like what's going on. Are they in exile? Are they about to go into exile? What are they talking about? What has happened during whose reign? And all of that can be found through a lot of different resources. If you want to hear more about like how to read the Bible and how to like understand what's going on, check out this playlist. Or if you want to hear about the resources that I use to go deeper, check out this playlist here, and I will see you guys in those videos. Bye guys.